Peace. You're now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Herut, and got my partner in Divine here, Brother Ra. How you doing?
Brother, enjoying life, man, taking it a day at a time. King, what about yourself?
Hey, man, same thing here, man. Just working, working hard, man. Trying to learn more and take this whole thing to the next level, man.
Indeed, indeed,
Indeed,
indeed.
man. Before we get too far, though, I want to remind you all that this episode is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group and Kala Purusha Astrology, and our patrons on Patreon. Once again, thank you all for the support. The Patreons make a lot of little things happen and stuff like that. So we definitely appreciate you guys' support. And for all the people over there at Patreon, you'll be getting another episode, in this video format. And again, go on there, check it out. You're also getting it early too, right? You're getting it a day early. So go check it out and, comment, give us some feedback, some, things that you would change or some other stuff that you may want to see. And, we'll definitely appreciate that indeed. But as far as our other sponsors, Push It Forward Media Group, you can find us at pushitforward.com. That's pushitfwd.com. There you can find this podcast. And you can find the stuff that we're working with on Ninth Lord Films and all that good stuff. You can find all that information there. And you can follow us on Instagram as well at Push It Forward, at PUSHITFWD. Brother, how can the people get a hold of you?
People have been pretty much hitting me up on the Kalapurusha Astrology at Gmail account. You can get me there.
Mm-hmm.
You can get me on Facebook or on Instagram at Shechem Raw. So one of those would definitely tap my shoulder.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. And another thing I wanted to announce, you'll see it on the Instagram shortly. And we made a light announcement about this last week, but we did launch the chart service, right? So you can go on pushitforward.com and look at Cosmic Convos podcast, and then you'll see the chart service there for available. And basically, you're gonna get. I mean, it's an excellent package for the money. This is more than what you're gonna get for free on any of the apps out there. None of the apps are gonna give you what we're gonna give you for free or anything like that. And it's always good to just have the chart printed, and so when you're checking out the show, you can go and you can find this stuff in your chart. You know what I'm saying? Look at your Navamsha, look at your D60, all that good stuff. So basically it's a chart package of it's gonna have your birth chart, all the Varga charts, your what else? Ashtak Varga is on there, you know, um, Bimshatari Dasha system, and the anti-dashas, um, and Melissa, all your benefic yogas, the main ones that's out there, and some other stuff in there too. But yeah, so it's definitely worth it, and we definitely encourage you all to go hit up that chart service. I know a lot of people been hitting us up about it, so we finally launched it there or whatnot. And probably this week you'll be able to just go ahead and click the button right off our Instagram at Cosmic Convos and get right to it. All right. But yeah, man. Episode 18. This season is kind of like, it's kind of flying, man. Like we getting deep in this thing, and we ain't even nowhere near
Yeah,
December yet.
yeah, September. I know.
Yeah,
And it's coming quick though. We're already 19 and we are 25, folks. So enjoy it while it lasts, because after September we'll be looking at season 3. So
indeed. Indeed. So speaking, um, last episode, man, that's probably we've been getting a pretty solid response from this last episode, man. I think it's like beyond relevant right now, especially with some of the things that's been trending in the news lately. Out there in the Hollywood and everything like that. Our brother Nick Cannon got, he's in some hot water right now, with a few different communities and stuff like that, based on some comments that he said, man. And he just need to listen to the podcast, man. He would have been straight. What you think?
Yeah, I'd say the podcast gives a good deal of insight as to the mindset of the individuals that he ruffled their those individuals of whom he's ruffled their feathers. So I would definitely listen to that podcast and listen carefully because it does talk about the core, the seed, the basis of where people come from as a race of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not personal, it really isn't personal. It's beyond personal at this point. When people learn to see that, then we'll move forward pretty quickly in getting this matter resolved. But that last podcast was definitely fire. A lot of people gave some really good feedback, and I got some really positive feedback from India, which was really, really insightful because the book that I referenced a few times there, the Most Ancient Aryan Society, is written by someone from India. So they definitely have a different purview of their historical context and the invasions that have happened versus a lot of outside individuals with that racial genetic makeup that try to or that are trying to dissuade the public from seeing it as an invasion as more of an amalgamation, which is completely not true. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
absolutely, man. It's important to understand the world that you live in and its people, in the history, and I mean, because it just it changes your whole perspective of how you move through the world, and then when you spin astrology into it, it's even more, profound. Gives you just a context. You know,
it does. Yeah.
and
It makes it all relevant. It's like now I see why. You know what I mean? And this is part of the divine plan. You know, there is
mhm.
a plan. There is a process for the supreme being to unfold itself, and in the grand cosmic scheme of things, when you look at the what we call the metaphorian, right? The metaphorian, at the very end of the metaphorian, right? Even Set is redeemed, right?
Yeah,
In fact, in the picture of the bark of Ra, Set is at the helm of the boat. Rahu's at the rear. I mean, excuse me, Rahu. Heru's at the rear, and Set is at the helm. So these forces, these beings that embody these um, forces, are necessary for man's uh, to evolve. There's nothing by accident, as we can see. Right. So if something, what we call nature, what we actually properly term netter, um, but when you understand that that force of energy has to be released through some act or some people, then it becomes impersonal. There's an old story about the scorpion and the frog,
yeah,
and the frog, needed a ride across the water. I'm sorry, excuse me, the scorpion needed a ride across the water, and the frog's back, and frog begged the scorpion, please don't sting me, don't sting me. And the scorpion assured him, I will not sting you. I gotta survive. I gotta make it across. So good old scorpion hops on the frog's back, rides across, and at the very end, last minute, right when they're about to get out the water, stings him. Next thing you know, he's like, well, why'd you do that? He said, hey, look, man, it's not personal, it's in my nature. Right. So
and
when you get that through your head, right, then you stop taking it, it's not personal. And the one thing I could suggest is that if our ancestors were in power here and we had to deal with, to contend with the adversaries that be, I can guarantee you our approach would not be one that's personal,
Yeah.
right?
By the
It'd be
way,
very evolved, very spiritually oriented, and looked at from a perspective of cosmic order. So,
absolutely, absolutely. And by the way, you mentioned that Scorpion the Frog. That's gonna be one of the short films we're doing too coming up.
oh
Like I
man, look
said,
at that.
you know,
Hmm.
we hitting up Aesop, man. Taking our stories back, right?
That's what it is, man. Truths are
Indeed,
truths. You know?
absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, man. So if you hadn't checked out episode 17, definitely go check out episode 17. I think it's definitely a must, must listen. All of them are, but definitely those shows where we go through the ages.
Yeah,
They're important, man.
the classic. Yeah,
Indeed. I mean, even when you look at like, we talk about like the time span that the United States has been around. Um, I mean, when you go and you look at Egypt, they've had almost foreign rulership that's ruled as long as the United States has been around as a country. I know the
well,
Hyksos about 100 years or so. It's stuff like you put you in context of like where you think that things will never like this will always be this way here, and
mm,
it won't. It will not.
no,
Not at all. Not close.
not even close. Yeah, when you look at the context of American history,
Mhm.
and then you compare it to the context of civilizations that have existed through dynasties, this is a bleep on the radar screen. I mean, this is a small, right, small flash in the pan when it comes to history and when it comes to nations. Um, when you look at, for example, Great Britain, right, they have a very longer history
Yeah.
than the United States, right? And you could probably take theirs back, you know, 13, 1200, when the Anglo Saxons began to coalesce and do their thing in that area. But really, really understand. Let's take, for example, uh, the um,
World War II.
since the year 2000. Well, let's say since the year 0 AD,
Hmm.
or Common Era, right? We've ruled that much time doubled. I think sometimes we really forget the context of time that Kemet existed in. We don't even really fathom it because we're tripping off of a country that's been around a few hundred years. Imagine being another nation and being observing a nation that's been around since antiquity. You know what I mean? So when we look at these problems we're dealing with these kind of, like I said, symptomatic issues, because all the stuff that we're dealing with is symptomatic problems. It's not the core issues, right? Because the core issues are much deeper and much more karmically profound, especially as far as African people are concerned. Well, we won't get into that. That's a whole nother conversation. But
And
nonetheless, right, these things are karmically oriented and there's a purpose and intent behind them.
hmm
So, when we look at Set, we don't look at Set as some entity that's the devil, right? We look at it as an entity that is required for your evolution, for your development to come out of the slumber that you're in,
hmm
right? So, you know, not to say that the European is Set, but for all intents and purposes, I mean, our ancestors kind of alluded to that. We call it the Low Asiatic, right? Well, the Low Asiatics, number one, their god, right, or their national tutelary deity, or whatever you want to call it, was Set. I mean, they chose that as an epithet, right, when they came in. This is all history. This, you can go look at this. You can read Gerald Massey. That's really one of the books I would recommend you reading. Is Gerald Massey's Book of Beginnings. Really gets in deep into it. And a lot of people say, "Oh, Gerald Massey's old," but a lot of stuff, the old stuff, is where you find the hidden truths. A lot of the things they have out now are um, cover ups, right? Because they
hmm
don't want you really to look in deep into what's behind there. But nonetheless, you know, when we look at the people that came in, the Hicks or the Shepherd Kings, right? They were called the Low Asiatics, right? So when they come in, they don't adopt our processes. They take a foreign, well, not foreign, but they take one that we really never used in mass, right? So when you take that and compare it, well, we say Set, and Set's color is red. It's even depicted in ancient times, right? The color of the skin is red, right? Um, it just goes to show, right, that there's something our ancestors knew about the forces that be and how to deal with them from a cosmic perspective in order to really gain a foothold on this thing. And the thing is that Kemet is still around. You just can't see it. Right? Kemet is there because the ages are still there. And remember, Kemet followed the ages to the nth degree. So when the age of Aries came, we fell, right? And we fell all the way through. But when the age of Pisces came, right, that subtle knowledge that Kemet had, right, was disseminated through the waters of Pisces. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It was disseminated throughout all the cultures of the world. That's why Asar's body was cut into 14 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Asar's body lays at the bottom, right, of the Nile, they say, right? But we could say the bottom of the depths of the water, right? And so that pressure that you feel in the Piscean age, right? The pressure of falsehood, bigotry, right? Illusions, racism, right? These things are Piscean in essence because the opposite is Virgoan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Virgo, right, breaks things down, and Pisces, right, puts things into holes. So this is a Virgoan Piscean dilemma that we're in, right? And we're dealing with that, trying to amass ourselves into a collective while trying to deal with the idiosyncrasies of individualism.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so as it unfolds, right, and man begins to awaken further to those realizations that yes, we do need races, but we also are one family,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then we will realize, right, okay, we can move forward now. Then you can start making those vast trips to Mars with ease, right, and exploring different levels of, um, of exploration, right? That is the ultimate divine plan. People don't like to see it because everyone wants to kind of be their own, and it is you should. Talking about pedigrees earlier, and you know, you should have a pedigree. There should be something that holds the standard. But holding the standard is one thing, but also realizing that there has been an admixture and a change as well. There's two truths.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for us to realize those things, especially those of us that have been the recipients, right, of oppression. Right. So it takes a very mature soul to be able to swallow that pill and say, okay, I see it has a purpose. Right? I see there's a plan. So, with that being said, right,
Mm-hmm.
that leads us kind of to, where we really lack in today's days and times, and I say lack in the sense of it's far and few, uh, it's far removed and few in between. True spiritual leaders are hard to um, really come by. You
Yeah.
know, and they are there. Right? We can find them very, very effectively by looking at the horoscope or the chart. But I'm not a Christian by any means, nor do I subscribe to any Christian tenets. But in the book, I believe it says there'll be many that will come in my name. Right? There's a lot of people out there that portray a lot of different things, especially regarding spirituality. But you can see very quickly as to who they are when you understand how to look at it from a astrological perspective.
Yeah.
And so, we got a lot of people out there. We got TD Jakes. I'm not saying anything about anything that he's done recently except pay attention, right? Because even in the book it says it's harder for a rich man to pass, and it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into the pearly gates,
Mm-hmm.
right? according to that book. Right? So, you have TD Jakes, you have Creflo Dollars, you have Joel Osteen's, you have they got quite a few, couple of them in Africa too. I don't recall their names, right? But these are big time, clergymen, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, when we look at these individuals, there's something that we are seeing, which is charisma, right? All of them have some kind of charismatic spirit, right? But charisma only gets you so far spiritually, right? Charisma, right, is the fifth house in a chart. But you know, you have to have something carried away a little. You have to have something in that backs you more than charisma, more than knowing scriptures, more than being able to recite, you know, and make people feel good. Because that's what church primarily is all about. Is when you walk out of there, you're supposed to feel better than you walked in, right?
Yeah.
But the one thing that we begin to see is when you really find um, individuals that are spiritually oriented, there's a pattern. You just see the pattern, and they may not be the biggest person on the block, spiritually speaking, but you will see it, and you'll also see those that uh, are challenged but perpetrate in that way as well. And one of the things we begin to look at in a chart is um, the primary constituent is Jupiter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. The primary constituent is Jupiter. Without Jupiter, it just doesn't happen. And so, when you're looking at a person's chart, from a spiritual perspective, and you really want to know, hey, is this person really, can they carry the day? Are they living truth behind closed doors? Or are they fronting? Right? Are they putting it out there like they do, but they don't? You want to look to the quality of Jupiter, because Jupiter is always going to show you, what they're doing. And this is not something that Roz made up or anyone else. This is something that has been time tested and stands the test of time. When you go look at Jupiter, you look to see where it's placed, how it's placed. You look at the Navamsha. You look at pretty much almost every other Varga chart to find out what it is that person's come to do spiritually, their spiritual propensities, their capacity, right? That's where we look. And so, I don't know per se what, TD Jake's chart is, right? But, you always want to look to see, hey, because Christianity is a religion that requires very little effort. I hate to say, folks, people probably disagree, and I can understand why,
Uh-huh.
right? But it requires very little effort. As a Christian, former Christian myself, I can say I could probably stand on that, right? To some degree. Most of us have been Christian at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But when you begin to develop spirituality, it becomes much more profound. As far as the actions, the constant mindfulness, the diet, the implementation of reserve, right? Meditation, right? Um, following wise counsel, those types of things. That's work. Right? It's work. It's not. It's not. It's not a thing that you can just dive right into. I mean, you almost have to get your feet wet sometimes. You know what I'm talking about. When you
Yeah.
first got started, right? It takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Christianity, you walk in, feel good, and walk out. You're Christian. Nothing. That's all you do. Believe. Right? So I say that to say looking at Jupiter in a chart, you should always see there's some prominence and some substantiability, something substantial there to give it the power that it needs uh, in order for that true spirituality to come through. One of the first things we look for, I always look for, is Jupiter in the ascendant. right? Jupiter in the ascendant to me is a hallmark, right? That person has come with Jupiter as a stamp, right? Of literally like saying, hey, you're going to do this. This is your personality.
My daughter got
Right?
that. She's Jupiter and there's
Yeah, she's gonna come with that spiritual purview, man.
yeah.
It's guaranteed. This is not, see, the things I'm telling you are not things you have to guess. These are guarantees. Now, of course, you have to qualify Jupiter's strength,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because Jupiter should be in a very healthy dignity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And those factors and such, those things are important.
Yeah.
But for the most part, right, you want to look for Jupiter to be in, and when I say the ascendant, and we'll talk about why that's really like a point of focus. Uh, the fifth and the ninth house are the actual next places you will look for Jupiter to be. These are the most prominent spiritual places for Jupiter to be. Well, here's the thing: if Jupiter is in the fifth or ninth house, it puts a direct aspect, a 100% aspect, back onto the first house. So again, the first house is crucial. It has to have some impact with regards to Jupiter. Now, the ascendant Lord could also be conjunct Jupiter. That makes a very strong impact, spiritually speaking, as well.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have it placed in a position where it really calls forth the first house, the fifth, or the ninth, that is what you look for to find someone that has spiritual knowledge, meaning that they don't really do much else but that. Right? That's what they do. Now, actually looking at TD Jakes' chart, right? And I don't have his birth time
I
per
pulled it
se.
up. That's all. Yeah.
But Jupiter is at 29 degrees.
It has Mars as
Yeah,
his what you call it?
yeah, it's Atma Karak.
Yeah.
No, actually, Jupiter's is Atma Karak.
Let's see. Depends on what. Yeah, see, I got at 20 Mars at 29, 43 minutes, and
Oh, no, no,
Jupiter
no, you're right.
29,
No, you're
23.
right, because it's 29, 2, 29, 1, 4. So, no, Mars is Yoga. Mars is Atma Karak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. Jupiter's a close, very close second, though.
Yeah.
Right? That is his Amatya Karaka, which indicates career, right? So, and it makes perfect sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be something that he would be indicating as far as what he would be doing. Um, so I just look at those general positions. Now, it is late degree, right? And late degrees is not usually very powerful. Every degree has some power, right? But what we have in astrology are different, what we call avashtas. And this is a semi-advanced technique, but avashtas are called states. And there's different types of avashtas. You have a Jagradati avashta, you have Baladati avashta, you have Lajatati avashta, Shayanati avashta, right? All these kind of give us a different background and understanding of how the planets play out. It's not just the placements. I'm giving you the information we cover here is very, very surface. But when we get into things, when we get to really understanding how those planets work, you have to get into the deeper aspects of it, especially Baladati and Shayanati avashtas. Avashta means state or condition, right? But Baladati avashta is when the planets are in certain degrees, right? And when the planet is between 0 to 6 degrees in day signs, right? Then that means that the planet is fairly young, meaning that the age of the planet, the ability for the planet to bring forth its full manifestation, right? The planet has a sense of immaturity or a sense of development to come to. Well, the same is the opposite for any planet that is between 424 to 230 degrees is considered old. And not only that, but 29th degree is also called Sandhi, which means it's kind of borderline, it's marginal. Well, it's borderline Virgo. Virgo's not the greatest spot for Jupiter, even though it is technically in Leo. But this borderline kind of like hairline marginal disposition can cause someone to remember Jupiter is greed. See, my mother loves TD Jakes. I the I hear it all the time. I hear it all the time, right?
Yeah.
But keep it in a buck, right? Jupiter is greed, right? And so when it's marginalized, right, they can attempt to combine spirituality with materialism. Virgo is an earth-based sign. It's an earthy sign. It deals in tangibles, right? Leo is very inspirational. It's in Uttara Falguni, which is a very specific portion of Leo.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? The sublord, and we look to the sublord to give a further deeper qualification of the planet and its intent. The sublord is in Taurus, which deals in money. In fact, his sun is in Taurus, which the core of his being is about the bread, y'all. I read people. This is what I do, right? So when you look for spirituality, right, you want to look for certain positions. Excuse me, right? This wouldn't be one I would call a guru.
Financial
Just bottom
guru.
line, you can quickly see it.
You hear me? A
Hmm?
financial guru.
No, a wealth pros a what is it? A wealth, a prosperity. I can't remember the name they call these types of preachers. Right?
Yeah.
They're prosperity preachers or something of that nature, right? I
Yeah.
don't get into much, and you can tell. Right?
I know what
Not
you're
too
talking
far,
about. I can't remember the
right?
term either, but I know
You
what
know
you're
what I'm talking
talking about.
about?
Yeah.
Y'all know what I'm talking about. The audience knows, and I'm sure somebody probably hit me up, tell me what it is. But they're prosperity preachers.
Yeah.
You know, they preach prosperity. The Lord is gonna save you. You know that. Yeah. Well, right. Jupiter in that marginalized degree definitely does not call forth a high spiritual perspective. Right. And this is just the beginning. Like I said, you can use Jupiter and go through and really get deep into it and look at all the positions that it has. But just knowing that right off, it's at the very end of Leo. So it's weakened, right? It's almost tipping its toe into the land of complications and the land of perfectionism,
Mm.
right? Which is Virgo. So you can see, right? Yeah, this is definitely not one I would call forth to, right, be a spiritual advisor. But nonetheless, right, moving on. And I, me, I don't know about you, bro, right, but me, I couldn't amass that kind of money and feel and sleep well at night. I just, my person couldn't.
I could, because I know what I'm gonna do with it. I
Well, but I'm
definitely
saying
could.
it wouldn't be my money.
What
You
you
know what I
say?
mean? It wouldn't be. I wouldn't. Me amassing it, it would go. It wouldn't stay in my pocket. Not to say
Hmm.
because I'm spending it, but to say because of, like you said, what I would do with it.
Yeah.
You know, building institutions, real institutions that help people. You
Yeah.
know, investing in land, right,
Hmm.
to grow healthier um, uh, food and things of that nature. And not to say that those individuals don't contribute. I'm sure they have charitable operations and give back quite a bit.
Yeah, but
But
that it's a the thing about it, and that's the distinction is that a lot of the wealth in the black community has been in the black church for ages.
that's
And
probably what it is. Yeah, you're right.
and we haven't really seen much of that get
Redistribute. Yeah.
in the actual black community. So that just shows you that right there.
I
I
mean,
don't think it's so much about the amassing the amount of wealth. It's just who's getting it, who's getting this wealth, and how they're oriented.
Yeah, no, and I we look at money as it's not evil, not in any
Hmm.
sense, not at all. Um, not at all,
But
right?
it's
It's
God
not.
in the
It's not.
West. It's God in the West. It's your legitimizer.
Right. It makes you bona fide, right?
Yeah.
um, but nonetheless, right? When you begin to understand how this works, I mean, only Christianity could do that. Do you know of any other religion that could do that? Islam couldn't do it.
Hmm.
Um, Judaism has done it by far, right? But that's a whole nother conversation, right? And I'm not Nick Cannon, so I can say exactly what it is and not feel threatened. But um, nonetheless, right? For the most part, most spiritual systems in the world, except in the West, you don't see those kind of things. Now, let me say this: there is Baba G, right? I have heard of that scenario, right? I don't know. You heard of that kind of the whole thing went down? What went down with Baba G and the whole sham?
No.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
yeah. So in India, right? And see,
Mm.
it's not just the West. India has it too, right? All cultures have it really, but there's more of it seeming here than it is there. But nonetheless, there's a guy that his name is Babaji. He manifests that's called Vibhuti, right? It's this ash, right, out of thin air supposedly, and holy ash, right? And
Okay.
he puts it on your forehead, and he walks around in a long, like orange kind of outfit. He got a big afro. You never heard of Babaji before?
Man, so much information out there.
Right.
Sometimes
But
I
this
might have seen
cat,
it
right?
every. Yeah.
Did you take a look at it?
I'm
Right.
looking at him now.
Right. So this cat, right, gets caught up though, but he's caught up behind molestation charges, man, embezzlement. I mean, he's got land and all that kind of stuff. So he's kind of similar, right? But I've never seen Babaji's chart. I've never looked at it, right? I'm sure I'm gonna find something similar. Right?
Hmm.
But the true spiritual individuals, right? You can when you pull their charts, you see it quickly. There's always a relationship between the moon and Jupiter. Have you noticed that? Like there's something substantial that the moon, and I know Gajra Kasari is a one yoga that produces that, but I'm not talking about just from that perspective. I'm talking about aspects as well, because you can have Jupiter aspected from the moon without a Gajra Kasari yoga, right? Because that's only when it's 1, 4, 7, or 10 from that position, right? But I'm talking about from fifth from the moon, ninth from the moon, even in opposition with Gajra Kasari, but even in 12th from the moon, right, can produce spiritual qualities. But always look for the fifth and ninth house, Jupiter being there. It's almost like a stamp of approval from God, from the Most High. Like you're gonna do spirituality this life. Just accept it. The other things we look for, and again, back to what we were talking about with, well, really tying it back to Jupiter, you want to look to see if Jupiter is the Atma Karaka. And the Atma Karaka is the planet that has the highest degrees in a chart. So if you look for that and you see Jupiter as that particular planet, it's a good propensity or a chance that the person's going to have a spiritual calling in life. Just a good chance. It's a very good chance of it. Um, Not always, because a lot of times Jupiter can be in a position that is compromised, meaning it's in the eighth house retrograde, right? Um, Debilitated, right? Um, could be in the 12th house conjunct Rahu, right? Aspected by Saturn. Those are things that can definitely change the quality of that Atma Kraka being Jupiter. But at the same time, you're going to notice themes. You're going to notice maybe the person tries to accomplish spiritual goals, but doesn't quite meet the mark, right? They set high expectations and they usually fall short. Many times they come as spiritual gurus, and then many times they're in the back doing many things that are not savory or wouldn't be considered spiritual. So Jupiter as a Atma Karaka, right, has a lot of purports to it, but nonetheless, you can always look to see that there's going to be some spiritual theme or some spiritual kind of set of challenges that are involved, whether it be a person lives up to the highest truth or a person falls short and can never live up to any of those truths. Excuse me. Um, the funny thing, though, is that when we're talking about Atma Karakas, right? And here's the thing: if Jupiter is in the ninth, or in the fifth, or in the first as a Atma Karaka, that you can guarantee they are going to be spiritually oriented. Now, if it's debilitated, you look for the cancellation. If it's not canceled, then you look for the D9 on the Navamsha to see the state and condition of the inner state or condition of Jupiter. You look to the D20, right? You look to these different charts to kind of see what is going on in the inner workings behind what's going on with the spirituality / religion, right? Because Jupiter can be religion too. But the strange thing about it is that when you use the Atma Karaka system, and we're talking about the 8-planet Atma Karaka system, because there's a 7-planet one, there's the 8-planet one. When you look at Rahu as the Atma Karaka, that also can indicate someone that has a spiritual path. Now, I was firstly confused why Rahu, the planet of insatiable desire, lust, and so forth, would be considered such a planet, but it makes sense. Because when Rahu causes you to exhaust yourself in regards to those things that you think you want, right? So it's going to give you your desire. But the thing about desire is not meant to quench your thirst. It's only meant to titillate your. It's only meant to be a catapult, not the end result. And so when desire becomes the end result, Rahu never is fulfilled because he doesn't have anything to digest the desire. He's bodiless. So at some point you realize the futile attempts that you're trying to gain at having some type of permanent fulfillment through something that's intangible. And you exhaust it to the point where now you realize that those things aren't actually what is life is about, and you begin to lean towards a spiritual purview. There's a story in India it's about an individual his name is Valmiki, and Valmiki was a criminal, right? He was a thief, right? But Valmiki at some point met a guru or a sage that taught him how to see things from a spiritual perspective, but through the actual acts of thievery or robbing people. So the strangest thing is that really many times the criminal becomes the saint. Right? Strange stuff, right? But true. Now, other things kind of impact the chart as well. One of the major things we look for is yogas, right? As I mentioned, Gajrakasara Yoga, and one of the questions from one of our patrons was about that. We discussed that in not the last podcast, but the previous. But nonetheless, Gajrakasara Yoga is one of the main yogas that we look for in a chart to show someone with a spiritual propensity. And so Jupiter has to be either with the moon, 4th, 7th, or 10th from the moon. Now, these things again have to be qualified because Jupiter has to be in this position that allows him to fulfill the highest spiritual mandates. If that is not the case, then a lot of times it just doesn't hold the weight, right, that is intended behind the Gajrakasara Yoga. The other thing we can look for is what's called a Brahma Yoga. Now, this is not that common. It happens. Is when the benefics or possession in the 4th, 10th, or 11th from the Lord of the Lagna, or the Ascendant Lord. One less common, one more common form of it actually is probably more common is when Saturn and Jupiter conjunct, right? Which creates another Brahma yoga. And Brahma yogas are in Brahma. Brahma is kind of like the head of the pantheon, the head of the Trinity in India. You have Brahma, you have Vishnu, and you have Shiva. But Brahma, right, is kind of like the creator, supreme being kind of aspect where everything comes out of. And this particular yoga produces individuals that have very profound spiritual insights and deep spiritual practices because Saturn is the planet of practicality and application. Saturn makes you do it. Saturn says, yeah, all that's good, and you can do your readings and you can consult the word and meditate, but what happens when the rubber meets the road? How spiritual are you when you have adversity? How spiritual are you when you have disease? How spiritual are you? How spiritual are you when you have no money, no food? See, Saturn, he tests the spirituality. Jupiter is great and grand, but Saturn says, yeah, let's see. And so that's one of the most profound yogas I've seen in many charts is that when the Jupiter and Saturn are conjunct, and they have to be conjunct, they have to be qualified, they have to be in a position that allows the yoga to come to fruition. It preferably should be in the first, fifth, or ninth house. It can also be in the 10th house. It can also be in the 4th house. Because these are still primal positions that allow the person, the 1, 4, 7, and 10, that's your cross that you bear. Everyone has a cross. That's it. Well, that particular placement, Jupiter Saturn is in that one of those, and preferably 4th or 10th, because the 7th is the least pious of the 1, 4, 7, and 10 positions. So 4th or 10th, that person definitely still will have a spiritual propensity, very strong. Another one is what we call, and these things also can be viewed via the Varga charts. Now, let me just say this quickly. 5th house, 9th house, those are your spiritual houses. The 12th house is a subtle spiritual house because it really doesn't deal with, it deals with hidden things, the hidden aspects of life, right? Things that are behind closed doors, right? And meditation as well. So a lot of times deep meditators will have a profound 12th house. But that doesn't cause you to be a guru, guide, sage, teacher, and so forth. That just means you can get deep into spirituality. But the other thing we look for is the Varga charts. We look for Jupiter in the Varga charts, right? We look for Jupiter in the D9. That is a key tell-all, right? If Jupiter is right healthy enough to consider someone a viable spiritual teacher. But it should be very well placed, right? In fact, the D9 is the spiritual chart. People have heard me say that many times. It's not quote unquote your marriage chart. Your marriage chart comes out of spirituality. You get married because you're spiritual, not because you love the person, not because you're trying to have someone cook your food, or it's really a spiritual exercise. And when you learn that, when you have a long-term relationship, because you say, well, all that stuff doesn't even matter. Now what matters is how we handle our spiritual development.
I mean, that's the playing ground. That's the number. You know, that's where it happens.
Yeah.
Go check out the our soulmates a thing episode.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. That tells it all, that episode, right?
Yeah.
On what it is, you know. The fastest road to the supreme being is through your mate.
Yep.
Not through sitting on a mountain. Sorry. Right. So because the mountain can't tell you that. Mountain can't talk back, right? That mate can talk back, right? Tougher than the mountain, trust me.
With no bills, no kids, no nothing about, you know.
Yeah, right. You real spiritual. You holier than thou, right? You cold, right? You a bad boy, right? Yeah. Put something on it, see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Shechem said, Round Amen, first said, Oh, yeah, I see these guys, these gurus out here, but take them out to 125th Street. Let us see that yellow dress walk by. Let's see how spiritual they are. Right? Right. That's probably where your boy got caught up. But the saddest thing, man, we'll talk about the guy Baba G's. A lot of those stories were young boys that they were being molested, which is really crazy. You know, I mean, just the thought process that this man is supposed to be able to materialize some spirit. I mean, he actually is not just ash. Like the guy materializes like lamps and watches and all kinds of stuff just out of thin air, and apparently it's supposedly real. And hey, I don't. I didn't investigate it too much. I mean, I've gotten wind of him because of some studies and researches I did way back in the day when I very first started getting into spirituality in the mid '90s. But um, I've seen him. I've looked. I've kind of watched him, but just it was appalling to kind of hear that. Like, wow, the guy got accused of those kinds of things. You would never think that anyone would of that caliber that could pull a magic watch out his sleeve. And I guess one of the stories was he put a watch out the sleeve. No, it was a camera. He put a camera out of his sleeve or his outfit, and apparently the camera had a serial number, and the guy called or found and did the research for the serial number, called the store where he bought it, and found out that this is folk. I don't know how true this is, but apparently this guy Baba G bought the camera at the same time when he was standing in front of the man and pulled the camera out and gave it to him. Now I don't know how true that is, right? Especially considering charges.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's just where it comes in. Is that if I had his chart, I could determine very quickly as to the validity of those stories. Right? It doesn't take long. We really can see inside your spirit when you know how to look properly. So back to what we were saying with regards to those placements. Um, you know, K2 is another one that most people don't know creates high spiritual levels. It's uncomfortable for most, though. Jupiter is very comfortable, spiritually speaking, because it gives you kind of like a balance. It makes you very spiritual, but it also can deal in this physical plane. But K2, right, which is Jupiter's kind of higher octave, because Rahu is kind of like Saturn's higher octave. It takes you out of this world. It's a spirituality that is not commensurate. It's more like a monk, right? Someone that really gets into it to where they marry God, they marry the Supreme Being, they marry the Nether, they marry the Orisha. They literally, that's who they belong to. And so that marriage, is a very spiritual one because it's obviously to a higher force. But those, K2 in the fifth or ninth house and the ascendant can do that as well. But it has to be qualified again through Jupiter. Jupiter is the linchpin, right? If Jupiter has aspect to one of those positions, then you're going to have that person is going to be extremely high, spiritually oriented.
What's some of the Vargas? Go ahead.
Yeah, so let's get some of the Vargas out there. Yeah. So, number one, D5, right? Because it's a higher harmonic, or not harmonic, but it's a insight into the fifth house, right? You want to look for fifth and ninth houses in those particular Vargas to be activated. So it's kind of like a double whammy. Let's say you see Jupiter in the D1 in the fifth house, and see Jupiter in the D9 in the fifth house. I mean, the D5 in the fifth house. That person's pretty spiritually oriented. Just you can guarantee it. Now, of course, the Vargas charts are contingent on the correct birth time. So, if you have the birth time and it's correct, then yeah, it's going to ring true. If the birth time is off, then you could have some discrepancies. That's why Vargas can be a little hairy, right? Because you need that exact time. But if you have the exact time and you see that propensity, you see those commonalities, that person has a high spiritual propensity. Now, the next one we look at D9, obviously, right? The Vamsha Nava 9, right? the ninth harmonic, the ninth cut of the chart. It's the chart of charts, right? The Varga of Vargas, right? Some people even read the chart. Some people have so much confidence in the D9. The number one, they will read you from the D9, not from the Rasi or the main chart. And they will actually say it's the second half of life. Now, I have not seen that to be true. I'm sorry. Not in my practice. Some people use it, and if they can garner it, go for it. I just don't see it. I don't. Any D chart cannot be read as a chart by
You,
itself.
you know, I think that's one of those things where it's like it was heavily, it was a statement that came out of the society that they lived in, and that it was fixated that at this point you will be doing this, so that's
Mm.
why they just just kind of lump that in there. But I don't think it really applies like that
No, you
today.
couldn't read it. I couldn't. Maybe BB Ramen could.
Hmm.
BB Ramen probably could because he's one of these like Chakrapani probably could. Those are like high level, high level astrologers, right? They probably can do all kind of stuff with astrology. We just can't even fathom. But my practice, I've never seen the D9 show the second half of life. Not as you just living it out, no. Maybe in the context of your spiritual development, in the context of your long term relationships, committed partnerships, vows, spiritual vows taken, yeah, then I could, but not as a chart. Because that means we're starting to describe you. You're going to change your physiology to look like the D9, which never happens. You're not going to change, right? Because my D1 is Libra, my D9 is Gemini. So, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to change to look like that. I'm Libra ascendant.
Uh-huh.
So, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, you have to use some common sense. Like you said, there's a lot of rules that come out of those systems that are meant and intended for certain things that are just changed or it doesn't apply. Not in, in certain societies.
Yeah.
Um, so you look for the D9. And the thing about the D9, if the Jupiter's in the fifth or ninth, it's powerful, right, in the D9. But you want to look for it to be strong in the D9. Just have strength, where it's not just debilitated, it's not conjunct any malefic planets, or it's not aspected by anything that would hammer it. It's in a strong position overall, and according to the houses. So you know what I mean, like that's what you look for in the D9, right? It's a qualifier, right? Not a quantifier. The next one we look to is the D20. Now, this is actually the chart that calls forth spirituality. It's the Vimshamsha is the spiritual progress chart. Um, Now, going back to the D9 before I want to touch on this before I forget. Venus is also a planet that does certain things with regards to spirituality, especially in the D9. So if you see Venus strong in the D9, they have a person that's a strong spiritual propensity because they can hold their sexual energy and they can keep a promise like you wouldn't believe. Right? So that's when you begin to use certain things because Jupiter will say one thing and give a certain indication of the spiritual propensity. But if Venus is damaged in the D9, a lot of times it's hard for that person to hold that spiritual vow. They might be great at it in the front end, but in the back end, something kind of comes in and takes away from that spiritual possibility. But back to the D20, right? The D20 is also a place where you want to look to the ninth house, right? In the D20. A connection between the ninth house in the D20 and the fifth house and the ninth house in the D1, right? Because you cross pollinate Varga charts. They go back and forth. They work in tandem,
Hmm.
right? Um, if you see Jupiter conjunct K2 in the D9, I mean in the D20 in the fifth or ninth, definitely someone is extremely spiritual. They will have a high spiritual propensity. Right. The other one we look for, and some people will say the D12, you want to look to see what the relationship is between Jupiter and the sun and the moon in the D12. Not per se in house position, but if they're trined, right? If Jupiter is trine sun or Jupiter is trine moon, very high spiritual propensities in the D12, right? Because that means your father. What does that mean? It means your mom and dad were spiritual. That means you're going to be spiritual, right? Because that's the D. What's what the D12 sees? The Dwadashamsha sees into the parents.
Yeah.
The male female aspect of you, right? The last one we really look to, and we may cut it off here, really touch on a few other things and move on. But the last one is the D60. Now the D60 is a funny one, and when I say funny, literally, you got to have the right time, y'all. After the D30, right, it starts getting real hanky because we're talking about every degree becomes a different ascendant, right? Well, if you're off, I mean, even by degree, if you're off, right, you're going to be off in the D30, right? But nonetheless, which is the Trim Shamsha, but the D60, right, the Shashti right, that's a chart we also want to look to qualify that spiritual backdrop. And if Jupiter is strong in the D60, right, that means they got good karma. They've come with a lot of lessons about spirituality. They don't have to figure it out. They live it, they do it, they understand it. Right. Now these all have to line up, right? Because you can't have the D60 looking great and the D1 looking toe up and the D9 looking kind of middle, right? They all should be there should be a theme, right? That should run through, and then you'll see a a grade A stamp, a grade A approved stamp spiritual person, right? They're going to be highly ordered.
Yeah.
When they all run concurrent. Right? It's rare, but that's when you can say, yep, you won't see a TD Jakes. You won't see anybody like that. You'll see someone like a Dalai Lama or like Malcolm X, right? I mean, even Malcolm, for example, what was Malcolm's Atma Karaka?
Jupiter.
In the ascendant,
And it's
in Sag.
Yeah.
Aspecting the moon, aspecting the fifth house, aspecting Mercury. That you know what I mean? Like that's what you look for. And when I say spiritual, I'm not saying money's bad, but I'm saying that in essence of how he lived, he was an example of letting spirituality be the forefront of your life and not taking other. That was his life. That was his everyday thing. He woke up, went to bed with it. That's what I mean, right? I don't know TD Jakes personally. He might get up with it and go to bed with it. I just, with the chart way I see it, he's a good actor. He has a lot of charisma, a lot of, the ability to carry things off in an abstract way. He does. I mean, I've sit there and watched him because, I look at it what other people look at to see what they see. Not to say I subscribe to it, but I just want to know, what is it that you find so fascinating? What is it that you see that is so spiritually oriented? He speaks and that's it. He speaks, he does movies, and he maybe, I guess, helps a few people. We all do that. I mean, I speak and you speak. There's nothing phenomenally spiritual about it. Not to me. I don't care if that's just me. I don't know personally. Everybody has their own purview. But nonetheless, right? To me, spirituality is quiet. It's reserved. It's not in the pulpit. Not pushing buttons and pulling people in, right? Because at some point, you become self-aggrandized through that process. Trust me. It's hard to stay humble. right? And have that, and the masses, not only the masses, but the amount of wealth that's associated. And he seems very humble. But I'm sorry, buying a $4 million home for your daughter, I cannot warrant that as a spiritual man.
Yeah, no, that's that's
I
a
just can't.
there's a rapper in Atlanta that think he's supposed to get out, but nonetheless, long story short, um, he bought his the projects that he grew up in, and he bought all the houses around the projects,
That's what you do. That's spirituality.
and everybody lived rent free until the feds
Yeah.
came and got him. But,
Well, hey, Valmiki was in the house, right? maybe his Atma Karaka was Rahu, right?
yeah, and whatnot.
Right.
But still with not even a fraction of the money that TD Jakes had, you probably did that with a couple $1,000,000.
I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like that to me, right? I'm not the judge, juror, executor of anybody, but for me, right? That's the litmus test to show me you gonna buy your daughter a $4 million house for what? I mean, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
maybe
Just
if
me,
you maybe if you're in New York, it might make sense. San Francisco.
I mean, even $1 million, man. Even $1 million, bro.
Yeah.
$1 million, and you talking about Georgia $4 million house? Oh my
man,
God,
that's a castle.
yeah.
I mean, real estate's going up here, but it's still a castle in Georgia.
I mean, we have a homeless problem.
Mm-hmm.
Serious.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like tent cities.
Yeah, we got them here too. Everywhere, every city got them now. We didn't have that when I was a kid, man.
Yeah, all under the interstate, man. It's like you see tents all over.
Skid rows everywhere now, isn't
it? Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, but you see what I'm saying? Like to me, that's spirituality. How many homeless people can I give a 6 month to a year home to get themselves on their feet?
Mm-hmm.
In mass, a little city, a little town, you know what I mean? Where everybody can support themselves, they can work for. I mean, this. I don't know, man. People say, well, prosperity is not wrong. I never said prosperity was wrong, but there's just something wrong to me. I have a daughter. You have a daughter. Would you borrow your daughter a $4 million house?
No,
I wouldn't. And if I had the money, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. There would be no purpose. Mm-hmm. Now, if she had 16 kids, then I probably would do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's different.
Right. If I had 16 grandkids, you probably would need all that land. But even then, you can get that with $1 million. I mean, it's just some things I don't know, man. It just boggles my brain how we can justify certain things. But hey, when you got Jupiter at the 29th degree, I guess that happens, right? In Leo.
Yeah. Indeed.
But with that, we'll leave it at that. I just wanted people to really kind of have the ability to start to kind of, if you got somebody in front of you pumping that noise, pop the hood.
Yeah, especially nowadays. I mean, it's even setting a TD Jakes to the side. We're in the age of the Instagram guru. There's a lot of social media influencers, as they call them, that are portraying themselves as spiritual gurus and stuff like that, or goddesses and spiritual gurus and stuff like that. So I mean, it's you want to. I mean, if you really want to see, what that person is looking like, see see you can check out their chart or something like that. If you call yourself following them,
you would be wise to do that.
Yeah,
because I checked mine out and he's bona fide. Right, certified. Right, so I ain't even worried. Like I'm like, oh wow, You know what I mean? So I
Indeed.
just add that to the people, get that to the folks, use the knowledge to gauge who you're dealing with, you know who's who, right? This stuff is not just there just to kind of, make you feel good. It's there to make you, there to make you wise, right? It's there to make you insightful and know who's who and who's not. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, I think we've done a pretty good service to the people and given them some tools to use, right? To kind of take a look and look at yourself, look at other people around you, look at your if you have a mom or brother, sister, family that has a pastor, just hey, what's the pastor's birthday? You may not have the time, but you can still see certain placements. Jupiter exalted, Jupiter in proximity to the moon, right? Those things
Mhm.
those are universal. You don't have to have a time to see those. And when you see them, you're like, yeah, now, yeah, okay. And not to say that all Christian pastors, preachers, or so forth are without knowledge. Many of them do have knowledge. I'm not faulting them for the system that they're in because they just may be misled, right? Because
Mhm.
there's a lot of good brothers and sisters that are in the church. Trust me, I have and they literally can be receptive to a lot of the knowledge, provided their Jupiter is healthy, right?
Mhm.
I've sat down and have very good conversations, very intelligent conversations with Christians, but they usually leaning outside of the church. They usually are at that point where they're kind of, I'm not in church, but I'm a Christian, kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they, start studying and researching and listening, and then they open their minds and they actually say, you know what? In fact, this is my thing, right? When the Jehovah's Witness come by, I have a ball. We have a good time. They leave out of there, leave out of here. Every time they come, they leave different, right? I've never
Mhm.
had one. The Mormons come on in, come have a seat. Yeah, you came to my door, I didn't come to your door. Now you about to get a earful, and when they leave, they're like, "Woo! Don't knock on that door."
That's how you get them off your doors, right? That's how you get them.
Yeah, we don't
Talk to
have
them.
those
No.
problems around here. Yeah,
You go ahead and talk to
yeah,
them.
yeah. No, come on in, have a seat. Right when they
Yeah.
see the setback trying, they're like, "Uh oh, oh, yeah." And setback is lit, like eyes glowing and everything, looking like, "What's up?"
Mhm.
Inspecting that soul, and they looking like, maybe we gon' head on out. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I do it with Hebrew Israelites. I do it with everybody. I mean, if you come to my door, just be prepared.
Indeed.
But nonetheless, I think we've done, like I said, the people a good service to give them some things to just contemplate and think about, and take a look around, get the date. You don't have to have the time. Just get the date. All right. See if you see a Gotcha Kasari yoga. See if you see a Brahma yoga. See if you see um, Jupiter in the fifth or ninth from the moon. Right. See if you see Jupiter conjunct Ketu too. That can be extremely powerful spiritually speaking. So little things to just note, uh, to kind of see, hey, is it real? Is it live or is it Memorex? Y'all might be too young for that, right? Right. But when I was a kid, they used to have a commercial. You had tapes, right? When you actually had tapes, like,
Yeah.
right, tapes was like, if you had a good tape, like a Memorex tape, the recording was clean, good, so they say if you played it, you shouldn't be able to tell if it was live or if it was Memorex, right? So
Yeah.
that's for the young folks, right? But
Indeed.
old heads know about Memorex. But yeah, if you want to know if it's bona fide, just pop the hood. It don't take much.
Absolutely. Well, with that being
Matter of fact,
said,
before
this
we go, where's your
uh,
Jupiter, brother?
it's in Pisces in
In what
ninth.
house? Mm,
Yeah.
see there? Automatic.
Man.
Automatic spiritual, dude. Automatic spiritual portfolio, right?
Yeah, I got Rahu getting there, so that had me in church when I was a young buck. Like, man, what is it? I'm out of here, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cool on
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah. Yeah, had you sipping that juice. You sipping that juice. That grape
Yeah,
juice.
man. Yeah, grape juice in
You
the
know, you went down
buckets.
there for communion. I did. I went down there and got my communion. Like, give me my cracker and my
Yeah,
juice.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
man. For
Yeah, that was
sure,
some good
man.
grape juice, man. We figure out
It
what to.
was, man. I'm telling you, when you said you wanted that grape juice, like, boy, that was the best grape juice ever. Let me get some of that.
Yeah, man.
Dude, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, shoot, this episode was brought to you by Push Forward Media Group, Calaprucia Astrology, and our patrons over on Patreon. Remember, again, go follow us on Instagram at Cosmic Convos. That's at SMICCONVO on Instagram, and hit the link tree down there, link tree and the profile, and that's how you can find all our stuff. You find the website, Push Forward Media Group with the in the Cosmic Convos page. There you can find all the different platforms that we're on. And like I said, maybe like in a week or so, might have another announcement of a new platform that we're on. We're just waiting for our official approvals and everything like that. And we're good like that. So again, want to thank you all for tuning in. It's another, good episode, and we'll be back next week with another great show for you. All right. So brother, you got anything?
No. You know, it's kind of quiet on the scene. The planets seem to be kind of in their special positions. The only thing I say is just enjoy the peace that's around, because it's not going to be here for long.
Yeah, indeed.
Enjoy the peace. Bask in it.
Yeah,
Because that's when you
indeed.
regenerate those waters. Those waters are new, so that you can come out on the other side and do your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, with that all being said, everybody, be good out there, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace.